We are looking at the IT grade 12 paper 1, or the practical exam from 2019. This is the June paper, not the November one. And we are busy with question 3. We've done question 3.1 and we're going to move on to question 3.2. Before we get into 3.2, let's just recap what we did in 3.1. There is a T-trainer object that is the code for that has been provided for us in a special object. And there is a create constructor, which has been done for us. There was a toString, which is incomplete, but we've completed it as part of 3.1. And there were two accessor methods, the get name and the get trainer ID. And then those are the 4 fields inside the object. And we did an update hours, an update sales, a qualifies for bonus Boolean function, which turns true or false. These were procedures, and then our toString that we finished. Now remember, we need to make sure that we use all of these methods, because there's no reason why they would give them to us or ask them to create them unless we were actually going to use them. So let's move down to 3.2. So 3.2, they tell us that they've provided code, or they've created an object called obj trainer. I'm assuming it'll be declared globally. We've actually got the program over here. I'm going to double click on the button. But if I go right to the top, there you can see they've declared it globally, and they obviously added our trainer class that we were working in the previous example. They've added it over there. So they've already done that. So what else do they want me to do? They say there's a text file called logbook.txt. I actually have it there as well, but let's just look at what's in the text file. I've read ahead and just double checked what it is. So the first thing is there is the trainer ID. Each trainer has a trainer ID. So there's the trainer ID followed by a semicolon, followed by a T or an S. If it's a T, if you read all this, if it's a T, it means training hours. If it's an S, it means number of, or the amount of, for the sales. Okay, so T means training, S means sales. So if it's a T, then the number after the hash will be the amount of hours that you were trained for. Okay, the number of hours of training that you received. If it's an S, that is the actual value of the sale that you made. So these two are sales, and that's the amount of sales, and these two over there are training hours, which means they train for 1.96 hours and so on. So that's how you read the text file. Now, when we click on this button, they've extract a name from a combo box, and then they assign an ID for us into some variables called sname and rtrain ID. That is done for us, thankfully. So if you look at, they've done it for you. They get the name from the combo box, and then they get the corresponding value for the ID for that particular trainer over here. So that's all been done for us. That's fantastic. So you can look at that code over there. Now that we know the name and the trainer, what do they want me to do? They want me to use these variables to instantiate the object and then set that button to visible, because I don't think it is set to visible. So if we look over here, I think if you click on it, you can see that the button is invisible. Okay, so let's do that. So first of all, we have an object there declared. Now we're going to instantiate. In other words, we're going to use the constructor. So obj trainer. Now this again, do not go .create. Do not go .create. This is the only time that you don't have the object .something. You must, when you instantiate, you make it assigned a value. First of all, what type of object is it? It's a T-trainer. And then you say the .create. Now the constructor that was created needs 2 parameters. It needs the trainer ID, which we have, and the name, which ironically enough, well, not ironically, but it's been done in such a way that it's actually exactly the same as we've got in the other, in the method that was created. So we're going to give it the trainer ID, we can give it the name, and that will instantiate. So please just stop here quickly. It's not the object.create, it's the object is assigned the type of object, T-trainer.create. That's the only time you do that. After this point, then we're going to go obj trainee dot whatever, .toString, whatever. So that's the only tricky one that you need to do. And then we need to set that button, which I think it's the second button, .visible, must be set to true. So there we go. So that's the first bit. That's the only 2 things we had to really do. Okay. So there's easy 4 marks. Okay, so that we're going to click one, we're going to click, and now we're going to process the logbook. on the next button. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. Okay, so what do we do with this logbook? So first of all, we must check whether or not the logbook exists. This is going to be your normal text file reading from a text file algorithm. And if the text file exists, search in each line if it's selected, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the moment I see reading from a text file, even if I don't understand what's happening here, I'm going to read this later. I go into zombie mode and I go, okay, I know my algorithm for a text file. And that is the following. So I'm going to first of all come here and create a, let's just double check. Did they make some global variable? No, they didn't. So I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to make a F for your text file variable. And I'm going to make an S-line variable, which is of type string. Straight away, I'm reading from a text file. So I'm going to go, if file exists, what's the name of the file? Well, we've got it there, logbook.txt. That's what it's called. So if file exists, logbook.txt. So we're checking if it doesn't exist. Equals to false. If it doesn't exist, then give appropriate message. No file found. Just double check that they haven't given you what message to display. So use that, but I'm just doing that. I'm going to zombie mode. I know my algorithm. Then I'm going to assign the file. I assign the text file variable to that logbook.txt. So from this point on, we assign that F to the text file variable to the actual file. From this point on, we don't need to actually use the word logbook.txt. We can just use F. Then we need to set the pointer to the very beginning. Let's start at the very beginning. There we go. Reset to F. And then we're going to loop while not, we don't know how many values are in this text file. So while we're not at the end of the text file, do the following. We are going to extract each line. We're going to read line from the text file into S-line. And at that point, S-line will be the very first line of the text file, which will be something that looks like that. And then it'll do it again and do the next line and do the next line, do the next line. It'll keep doing it. And then the step that a lot of people forget to do right at the end, you must close your file. Close it, because sometimes they allocate a mark for that and you lose that mark, and it's a very simple thing to do. So there we go. So there's my zombie mode, and what I've done is I've scored myself time now because I knew that algorithm straight away, typed it out, I knew how to get those marks. Now let's go look at the question. So check if the text file exists. We did that. Display a suitable message. We did that, and close the program. Close the program. Okay, so then we want to probably close it completely, which means we don't actually, we can say exit, should be fine, or close, it should be fine. If the text file, so if they actually want me to close it, then you can actually close like that if you want to use the close function. Procedure actually, sorry. If the text file exists, search in each line for the selected trainer's ID. If the trainer's ID is found, according to the one that we are looking at, do the following. So we want to first, so each line is going to look like that. We don't always want to process it. We want to first check if that 12 matches the 12 from the trainer ID. And that is why that trainer ID should be, it's not global. But maybe there is a way to get, now this has already been put into the object. Is there a way to get it from the object? Yes, there is. We can get the trainer ID from this function. So I know you might be tempted, oh, just make that a global. No, we don't need to. We are simply going to extract that. Now, how do we know where the trainer ID is? I don't know if it's, if we look at the logbook, it's always 2 characters, but I don't think we can always assume that. I think we have to be aware that it could possibly be 3 or so we can't assume. They didn't say that, they just told me that the text file, that the trainer ID, they said, yeah, it's always separated by a semicolon. They didn't tell me that it's always 2. So therefore I'm going to have to extract that ID. So I'm going to get the ID, which would be a number, because we're comparing a number with a number. So let's make an R selected. Let's go R trainer ID. Let's do that. That's an integer. Okay, so let's go. Boom, boom. So I'm going to extract that a little bit. So I'm going to go R trainer ID is equal. We're going to copy from S-line, because S-line looks like this, and we're going to copy from position 1 until the position of the semicolon. the position of the semicolon of the colon. There's a colon, there's a semicolon inside of S line, but we don't want to copy 12 semicolon. We want to go 12, back it up a little bit. So we're going to go -1. So we're going to do that. So there we go. So we copy from 1 until the position of the semicolon -1, and that will give me the 12, but that'll give me a 12. Copy returns a string, and this is an integer. So we need to convert this from a string to an integer. And then that way, this will equal the 12. Okay. Oh, what I just did is I just did another version of doing it. If you want to separate, first find the position of the semi and break it up into little steps, you can do it. If this is too long for you to understand, then break it up into little steps. That's okay as well. So we've got the trainer ID. Now we want to find out if that matches the one that we are looking at with our object. So if this trainer ID is the same as the object that we're dealing with, obj trainer dot get trainer ID. So there we go. We've used 1. Begin end. So tick, boom, we've used that one. So I'm going to go, yes, we've used that one already. So great. And we used the constructor already. So there we go. We've got 2 done. Boom. Now, if it's a match, what do they want me to do? If it's a match, then we extract what type it is, a T or an S, and the value indicating the number of hours or the sale. Okay, so we need to see if it's a T or an S, and then use those appropriately. Okay, so let's first do the extraction. So if we get to this point, then we want to extract the rest of that stuff, which means we want to delete up until we want to delete. So we just want to get that little bit there. So I'm gonna, if we get to this point, I'm going to get rid of all that stuff in front from 1 till the position of the semicolon in S line. What that is doing is it's deleting, let's put this bracket, it's deleting from 1 until the semicolon. So what we will be left with in S line will be equal to a T with a hash followed by 0.98, or it would be an S and a hash and something else. So that's what we're looking at. Then we know that it's only going to be 1 character. So I just have to check if S line 1, the first character equals a T, then I know that it's a T. Okay, so before that, I actually want to extract that second number. So what I'm going to do is I want to get the value. I'm going to call it R. It's a real number. So R value of type real. I want to get whatever that number is at the end. So we delete from S line, so we're left with that. So I want to get, how do I get that R value? Well, I know that it's always 1 letter followed by a hash. So I'm going to say, well, we're going to copy from S line, not at the starting from the first character, no, not from the second, always starting from the 3rd character. And how many characters we're going to copy? I don't know, but let's make it 100, because we know that's all that's left over is that. But that is a string, and this is a real, so we're going to convert it from a string to a float. And that way, this will equal to the 0.98. Fantastic. So there we go. So if the first letter is a T, then they want me to update the hours, because the value after the T will be the number of hours. But if it's an S, we must update the cell. So we're going to call these 2 functions, or procedures, sorry, but depending on if it's a T or an S. So if the first line of S line is a T, then we know that that value represents hours. So then we're going to say obj trainee.update hours with what? With R value, because that's going to be in hours. But else, I think just to be sure, we can say if S line 1 is equal to an S, then we're going to do the exact same thing, except for instead of using the method update hours, we're going to update sales. So if it's an S, then the value afterwards in this R value will be the sales that they just made. So we're going to put R value there as well. So there we go. And it'll only do this if the train ID matches the one that we use. So if we look at, hey, you know these two, we use this one and we use this one. So we've used a lot of them already. That's fantastic. Okay, so what's next? So we do that. Once all the data from the text file has been processed, then so this is going to happen. So this is going to happen for each and every record. So let's just make that nice and pretty there. So this is the end of the if, and then this is the end of the while loop. There we go. So there we go. So that's going to happen at the end of the while loop. We close the file. Now we are going to, that rich edit, we're going to clear. They say we must clear it. They say clear it, and then display the information using the toString in that output area. I'm assuming this is the output area. Yeah. So then we're going to say, okay, the rich edit dot lines dot add, and now we're going to say obj trainee dot toString. So call the toString. We don't need to give it any parameters, just display it like it is, and then we are going to make that button visible. So then btn dot visible for the third button is equal to true. Okay, so we have now used the toString function. So boom, boom. Now we've only got 2 left. So I'm assuming we're going to use that in the next one. Okay, so let's test that quickly. Let's test to see if it works. Do they give me an example? So let's Cody Shaw. It should look something like that. So let's go. Cody Shaw's already selected, so I'm going to click on continue. So that loads the object, or instantiates the object. Now we're going to process the logbook. Hey, those values are the same. That's fantastic. So what it's done is it's got a 10, obviously, for the trainer ID. It checked whenever the logbook has a 10, and then that's a T, so we will add that to the hours. And then, there's another T, add that to the hours. And then later on, 10 made a sale, so we add that to the sale. So that's what it was doing. So I was going through each and every line, only using the ones that match the trainer ID. And then the last question, so this one, the last one, here we go. Write down the code, determine if the trainer qualifies for a bonus using the qualifies bonus. Display a suitable message saying you qualify for a bonus. So you got to say the trainer is not registered. No, that was for the previous one. What is this? Okay. I think we missed something here. If the trainer is selected and the logbook data is processed, then the trainer is not registered. I think I've missed something here. Mr. Long, you need to read the whole question. So if the trainer's ID could not be found in the text file, then it says, so we missed something here. So if it can't be found, so we just got to add a little thing to say if it was not found. Okay, that's easy. So while we're looking for it, the moment we found the trainer, we need to say, hey, we found him. So I'm going to make a thin ghost quickly. Yes, be found, which is a thin ghost. I mean a Boolean, because it's a lean boo. So the thin ghost. And we are going to, before we start doing anything, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Be found equals to false. We're going to say we don't know, we haven't found it. We haven't found what we're looking for. The moment we find the trainer, the moment we find a match, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Be found is now true. I don't set it back to false. I defaulted it to false, and the moment I find a train ID, it's got its true. Fantastic. If I get to this part and be found is still true, if be found is still false, if be found is still false at this particular point, that means I went through the entire logbook and didn't find anyone. So then we're going to say this clear, and we're not going to use, I'm just going to copy and paste this. We're going to clear the rich edit, and we're going to just display that message that they want me to display, that the trainee is not registered. So the trainee is not registered. Else, if it's true, then we're going to do the stuff that we just did now, because we don't want to set that visible to true if it's not. Okay, so there we go. So that's just a little trick. So we assumed that we haven't found it, and then the moment we found it, we set it to default to false. The moment we find it, we set it to true. That means if we get through the entire logbook and it's still false, that means it never changed once, which means we didn't find it. Okay, so let's try that quickly. So they said with Lindywear. So Lindywear obviously doesn't have any code associated with it. Boom, click, process training not found. But if I go back to Cody, process it, click it, and yes, it's fine. And the button's not available. Okay, so there we go. So what did we learn today? We learned that we need to read the whole question, Mr. Long, because otherwise you're going to get it wrong. So let's go back to what we were doing. So determine if the trainee qualifies for a bonus. If they qualify, then display a suitable message. So we're just going to add that little thing at the bottom. They qualify or they do not qualify for a bonus. It just adds it to the bottom. Okay, so that's easy. So, and the trainee qualifies for a bonus. Boom. So let's go look. So if we come here, so we're just going to say if the object trainee dot qualifies for a bonus, if that equals true, you don't even need to put that part in, then we're going to say red q1.lines.add. We're going to add the word, the text, the trainee qualifies for a bonus. So let's type that in. I just copied and pasted it. Obviously you can't do that in exam because you don't have it digitally, but I'm just doing this to save time. But if it's not true, then we need to display the trainee does not qualify for a bonus. The trainee does not qualify for a bonus. And then remember, we must put no semicolon before the else. So let's run that quickly. Boom, boom, boom. So Cody Shaw, process the logbook, and do they qualify for a bonus? Yes, they qualify for a bonus. And do they give me an example of one that doesn't? Tyrone Kemsey doesn't qualify. So let's try Tyrone. So let's select Tyrone. We instantiate it. We process the logbook. And no, you do not qualify for bonus. Now, just before I end, I just want to double check something. I think we used the toString and we used the qualifier. We never used the get name. So that was sneaky that they gave me something that we didn't use. Okay, so this is a special case where we actually didn't need to use it. Luckily, they gave it to us, but they would never not ask you to use any of the procedures or functions or constructors that you actually created. If they ask you to create it, you're definitely going to need to use it. Okay, so there we go. I think we're done. That seems to be, let's as long as read the whole question. I'll be out at the end, thank goodness, because we learned we need to read the whole question. Okay, so there we go. That's it, done. So let's move on to question 4 now. Oh, for more videos in this series, go look at the description or go to our playlist on our YouTube channel. Leave a like, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, don't do it the long way. Do it the Mr. Long way. And good luck for exams.